This is a mind map I made. It helped me master 4 huge topics while I was cramming for my exams. It took me less than an hour to make, and because of it, I will remember what I learned forever. And no, that's not an exaggeration, because the absolute #1 best way to learn for each and every one of you is through the process of creating mind maps. And today I'm going to show you how to do this for exams when you're stressed, cramming, nothing's going in. This is the high-speed pro mind mapping method, PRO, priming, relating, and organizing. Those are the 3 big things you need to be doing while creating a good mind map. But we're not going to be doing this slow, perfect way of learning. We'll be focusing on understanding as much as we can, like this, and then building mental cheat sheets for entire topics so that you'll remember it perfectly. And to learn the specific steps to creating these mind maps, I've made an absolutely free, detailed pro mind mapping PDF guide for you guys that you can get for free using the link in the description. It includes, honestly, the entire method, extra details for each step, annotated mind maps of my own, and frequently asked questions that I get in my comments. Just enter your emails in the link below and the free PDF will be hand delivered to your inbox in just a few moments. And by the way, beside the medical topics, I'll also be talking about how I would do it with 3 economic topics, just to prove that it can be done with every single subject that you're studying. Let's go. Phase 1, speed priming. The very first thing that needs to be clarified is that multiple related topics need to be studied together. We aren't studying them one by one. So list out all the topics within your subject and group them into ones that naturally connect and logically will make sense to actually study and learn together. This helps your brain chunk and actually compare between them while you learn these topics, which is, simply said, a lot faster. This is my whole list of MSK conditions that I need to learn, and this is what they look like after I group them. I grouped these conditions based on anatomy because that's what makes most sense. Whereas if you looked at the eye conditions I had to learn, this is what they looked like before, and this is what they look like afterwards. Because they all affect the eye, I can't group them based on anatomy, so that I group them based on the symptoms that these conditions cause. And here I also put up a list of ways that you can group your own topics with some examples, just so you can get an idea of how to actually group these before learning them. Step 2, now we pick one of these grouped up topics and we do the first read of all 3 to 4 of them together. We're doing the spinal conditions today, and the next thing I really want to help you understand is that you always want to be studying in passes. In the first pass or the first read of all 3 topics, we are doing 2 things. Number 1, you are skimming and understanding the basics for all 3 topics. Give this step around 5 to 10 minutes each maximum. Read what the actual topic is about, look at the headings, the subheadings, and understand the structure of the topic, and maybe watch a quick visual video. And then the second thing you need to be doing during this first read, actually you need to be doing this right from the start of your studying all the way till the end. And that is the way you actually learn while reading, is by comparing the information between the topics. What are the general similarities and differences between topic 1, 2, and 3? Ask yourself this as soon as possible, maybe 1 or 2 minutes even in the learning process. Because the faster you do it, the faster you'll understand and the faster your learning will become. Step 3, now that you've actually scouted the landscape of the topics, you've understood the basics, it's time for the second read, the second pass, where we dive deeper, no time to waste. In this second read, you are doing 2 major things. As you read, you should side by side take notes on all 3 topics. Now, I'm usually against note taking. I usually make a lot of fun of it. But after getting pretty good at mind maps myself and then teaching several others to get good at them as well over the last few months, what I've learned is that note taking in the special way that I'm about to show you is a very helpful in-between steps when you're making your mind maps. The catch when you're doing this note taking in the second pass is that you can only write down the information that you are confident that is important enough to go on your mind map. That is part of the reason why we're making these notes, so that you can use them to put them on your mind map. That way, it's all in front of you. A condensed version of each of the topics is right in front of you. You can choose how to link between them, you can compare them, and then think about how all of this can be represented on your mind map. So when you're note taking, do not just copy. Everything that you're writing will go on your mind map. That is what you should have in your head. The second catch is that you need to make the notes for all 3 topics together. You're not just making the notes for all of topic 1 and then all of topic 2 and then all of topic 3. But because you're studying all 3 of them side by side, you should be making notes for them together as well, as you'll see me do in the recording. Going through what each condition means, then going through the risk factors of 1, 2, 3 topics, then going through the investigations of 1, 2, 3 topics. This forces you to compare between them, which automatically helps you learn the information that you're studying. And that is the second big thing that you need to be doing while you are going through the second pass, you're reading through the second pass of the information. While you're going through the information, you're not just asking, oh, what is this? But rather you're asking yourself, how is disease 1 diagnosed compared to disease 2? Why is it different? Or if you're studying economic market structures, you ask yourself, how is the pricing power different in monopoly versus oligopoly? And why? Why are they similar or different? What are the reasons for them? This is you literally pausing while you read and thinking, evaluating the importance of the information instead of just note-taking like a robot. And it results in you actually learning, not just reading the topic like a muppet. But as much as understanding helps, the other part of learning is recall and practice, especially near to your exams, and that is when the flashcards and questions can definitely not be neglected. So while you go through the topics, at this stage, it would be vital for you to actually create your questions as well. And honestly, the best, most efficient way to do this step would be to use an application like RemNote. It combines note-taking and flashcards, kind of like Notion and Anki fused together. Because as students, we don't want to be taking out huge chunks of time just to create questions for some active recall, right? And that is where RemNote is so helpful, because it allows you to directly create the flashcards from within your notes. Honestly, I wish I could go back and tell myself that something like this exists to save all those hours that I would spend creating questions. And also, it's a free application that allows you to create as many questions and notes that you want to. Just click the link in the description and check it out for free. I've been using it throughout this video while making flashcards directly while I was note-taking, but let me show you how it works. All you need to do is add this double equal to sign between the question and the answer, and boom, flashcard done. You can go preview it here to see exactly what it's testing, and then practice all of the ones that you've made by clicking here. And the thing is, there's 6 other types of flashcards that you can make. Most of the ones I made here are the multi-lined ones, where you add 3 equals to signs here after the question, and then add the bullet points you need to remember. As you can see, you can click tab, and it allows you to AI generate the answer for the question that you write down. I prefer the multi-line flashcards most because it's more memorable than having 5 single answered ones, and it's better than having a big paragraph. And also because, let's say, let me go on the flashcard. I forgot this bullet point when recalling this. I can just go and check off any individual pieces of information I forgot, and then click away, and the spaced repetition algorithm will focus more on it when I revise. And yes, the spaced repetition algorithm works wonders too, similar to Anki. It forces you to review and practice your cards regularly so it really sticks in your head. Again, I can also create these fill-in-the-blank cards within the flashcards as well by just hovering over and clicking a button here. And the final one, to be honest, I use quite a bit is image occlusions. I like to paste images in my notes, especially if I want to use it for my mind map or entire lecture slides even, and then occlude them bits that I want to test myself on. Saves a lot of time, especially if you're doing it during the lecture or the class itself. And that's pretty much how you make the flashcards on here. It's pretty easy. This is honestly, for me, the most useful application that is out there at the moment for students. Because of the amount of time it saves, how easy it is to use, and because it's all in one. You make your notes, make your flashcards within the notes, do the flashcards on here, and learn however you need to, all within one app. It's an absolute no-brainer in my book, so if you are interested, click the link in my description, check it out. The free version lets you make unlimited flashcards and notes, so there's honestly no downside as well. By the way, a very important tip for when you are note-taking is to not just copy it down straight away from the page as you are reading. That's not helpful. Pause while you're reading, just pause and take a few moments to think about, for example, if you're looking at the symptoms of spinal stenosis, read through those symptoms, try and imagine them, and then side by side, read through the symptoms of the other conditions or the other topics that you're learning, and then compare them. Stenosis and disc prolapse, they cause back pain. One affects older people, one affects younger people. Ankylosing spondylitis is an inflammatory condition, so it has more of those inflammatory symptoms, whereas discitis has more of those systemic symptoms like fever, etc. And then only once you've kind of looked at the symptoms for all 4 of the diseases that you're doing, or 3 of them, that's when you think about them holistically and write them down. That juggling and thinking you're doing before writing the notes down is where the real learning is occurring. So focus your time on comparison, thinking about the information before writing it all down. Let's get into phase 2, speed relating. Okay, we're done with the notes and we started to learn through the comparison of these topics. Now let's take it to the next level and think about how all of these different concepts that we've learned in the topics can be related and linked together on a mind map. I'm going to go through each step in quite a lot of detail because for beginners, it's a lot better for me to actually explain why you're doing a certain thing, why you need to be relating, etc. But because this is high-speed mind mapping, your aim should be to do the next steps, step 4 and 5, in that second read, in that priming phase. we're combining these phases. In fact, if you do these two steps during that second read itself, when you're priming yourself with the information, if you do it right from the start, if you're relating and comparing like this, it'll allow you to learn a lot better. Let me show you how. Now, you're not Einstein. You're not going to be able to just look at the information and be able to link it perfectly on your mind map. So what we're going to do to make it easier is to link the information and even draw the mind map out later in layers. Starting with the center of the mind map, building outwards, and then building even more. This entire next section is going to help us plan out exactly what our mind map will look like, which makes it a lot easier and faster to draw it later. The first big layer of information that we're going to be linking is those main topics that we're revising, the 3 conditions or the 3 economic markets or whatever you're doing. Let's do it, for example, with the spinal diseases that we have. Of course, the basic link between them right now is that they're all diseases that affect the spine. For the economic topics, it's like they all are different types of marketing structures. But those are just surface level links. We can't just draw the spine in the middle of the page or write down spinal conditions in the middle and have the arrows coming off. So let's think a step deeper. Is there a shared cause? A pattern across the different conditions? And the way I'd recommend you do this is simply write down the main comparisons and links that you can find beneath the topics as you're reading through them. Literally title it relations and write down all the relations that you can think of. Just list all the relations and links out that you can think of. Ask yourself as many comparative questions and just list them out. That is the best way most of my students learn, and that is what works. And then you can decide what makes sense for the center of the mind map. How should you lay out the rest of the information? And ideally, when you're thinking about this first layer of information, this central idea in the middle of the mind map that will represent the 3 big topics that we're talking about, you have to make it visual. Whether it's a central diagram, or a drawing in the middle, or a funnel, or a big spectrum, or a flowchart of ideas, linking the 3 big topics through a visual diagram is the best way to actually go through with the rest of the mind map, because this is what all the rest of our information will be coming off of, and this is what we're going to be remembering when we think about these 3 big topics. So let me show you, for example, how I was thinking about this while I was studying. When I was writing down the relations here, I've written prolapse and stenosis are both mechanical issues, while I've also said ankylosing spondylitis and discitis are inflammatory. So here I'm clearly thinking they all affect the lower back. So could I just show 2 vertebrae? No, let me think about how I can differentiate them. 2 of them are inflammatory, 2 of them are more mechanical. Maybe I can split the vertebrae in half, put them in the middle of the diagram. Some are affecting one side and some are affecting the other. Let me give another example for the marketing structures. If you think about it, they're kind of like on a spectrum where perfect competition is on one end with total competition and zero pricing power, versus monopoly, which is on the other end of the spectrum with zero competition and complete control. And then you have oligopolies, which sit in the center with a few firms locked in competitive battle. That's a decent center idea, I think. It's on a spectrum, it's memorable, you can visualize each part. Again, all I've done to create that first layer of the mind map, that central idea, is that I've listed out 2 to 3 meaningful relations between these 3 big topics, and I've figured out how I can visually kind of represent them. It's not as hard as you think. It forces you to think with a comparison mindset. And that is why making mind maps is so effective, because it forces you to think in such a way that makes your learning super effective. And that's all you need to do in this beginning step. Come up with that central idea and maybe draw a rough diagram of it out, just so you know if it will work. And now step 5, where we look at the rest of the concepts and the information within all of our topics and think about how we can put them and relate them on the mind map. And it's the same process as before. Number 1, figure out all the relations for the rest of the information. And number 2, roughly draw it out. The second layer of information that goes on the mind maps are the general concepts to do with these topics. So we first only kind of think about how they're related, how they can be put on the mind map now. And then after that, we think about the third layer, which is now which details do we want to attach to this mind map, if we even want to do any. For the spine conditions, I listed out even more relations. I compared the diseases by treatment. Some are more conservative, some are surgical. I compared how each condition would present to me if they were a patient. I thought about how they would be investigated. What would the differences between the patients be? And then I thought about the third layer, the niche investigations, the niche specific details, the drug names, etc. that I need to know. Do I want to even include them on my mind map? Is there a direct link between the details of one topic and the details of another topic? This is something very important. This mind map is not going to include every single bit of information that you need to know about this topic. But what it does need to do is act as the base and how you will think about these topics for the rest of your revision. It's not like your notes, so only include things that will add to your bigger picture, add to your understanding, because the rest of the details you'll learn automatically in your head as your understanding improves. And the last bit, once we have a huge list of links, we have a general idea of how we want to create the mind map, whether it's different flowcharts to do with the topics, a funnel, a table around the central idea, who knows. What we need to do is sketch a rough mind map structure out on the paper or the iPad or whatever you're using. Treat it like a very rough, quick drawing, a dry run before the real mind map is actually being created. I didn't used to do this, but it helps a lot of the students that I've worked with, because it makes that final mind map step a lot easier, and it forces you to critically think, which connections do I have here are important? Which connections, which relations flow naturally and add to my understanding? What can I put on the mind map? Throughout this process, what you may have noticed is that we've built up towards that mind map. We've started with priming and reading, making some notes, finding relations, and now creating a rough sketch, and then we're making the full mind map. We're focusing on the process of finding those relations, creating deeper connections, instead of jumping straight to that mind map. And so when you get to that rough drawing stage where you're drawing out the mind map, figuring out all the connections that you've written down, this is where you're going from passive reading to active, where you're going from note-taking to deep understanding and visualizing all of these links. So take your time, use the relation notes that you've made, use the rest of the notes as well, keep the comparison in your head, and now let's get into the final phase where we draw the full clear version of this mind map. But because of all the planning that we've done, all the prep we've done, this step is the easiest one to do, because we've done all of the work. We've learned 90% of the information, we've compared and found the links, and planned even roughly what our mind map will be looking like. So our ideas of what these topics contain, their information, and how they work is already so strong. And this is just literally the final stretch where we visualize it all and piece it all together. But because this is high-speed mind mapping, we're not going to be taking an hour to make it look perfect and draw all the lines and colors amazingly. This is what we're doing. Start with drawing that central idea, the skeleton structure that links the 3 big topics. Number 2, draw on the rest of the general concepts on there, the important ones. And then number 3, add in the details that you think you might need to know. Always taking it in layers. I have a lot of methods to add flow and clarity to the mind maps, but this is the most important one. If you take nothing away from this video, if you do take something away from this video, it should be this. Make 90% of the mind map as visual as possible with as little writing as possible. A lot of people say, oh, it's easy to do with the medical topics that you have, so let's do it with economic topics. Ask yourself, does me writing perfect competition on one end, oligopoly in the middle, and the monopoly on the other end, and drawing a spectrum out like a line, does that even help me? Will I remember that? No chance. But what if on one end, on the perfect competition end, you put a farmer's market that is selling the same vegetables, no one can overcharge? That represents perfect competition, right? Because that is what it's like in real life. And then you have all the way on the other end, you have monopoly, and you can put this big drug on like a pill with a big company behind it that owns this pill. There's no competition for it, and they can set as sky high prices as they want to. And then for oligopoly in the middle, you can draw out a couple competitive airlines, Emirates, Qatar, Saudi, to represent that middle ground where a few airline companies are fighting for tickets and pricing, etc. And there it is. We've gone from 3 different words on a line that we kind of understand, we may not, to then 20 plus facts represented by 3 visual drawings representing those economic markets that even a 5-year-old would understand. That is the power of visualizing the information that you're learning. And since, by the way, that was just the central basic idea of those markets, let me show you the rest of the mind map that I made for the spinal conditions. This is what you need to be doing with your own studies. Adding those drawings and making the mind map as visual as you possibly can, limiting the words that are on there, and trying to have visuals that relate multiple concepts. That is the big aim here. And yes, use ChatGPT if visualizing those topics is difficult. Ask it for like interesting analogies, and that generally does spark some sort of idea. I'll put some prompts down in the description, but yes, keep on adding those visual ways of representation as mentioned prior, the tables, the flowcharts, the Venn diagrams, pillars, pyramids of information. Choose anything that will help you gain that deeper understanding of what you're learning, the concepts especially. But also do remember, this is an exam that you're prepping for. You don't want to be spending ages making that mind map look perfect, etc. So focus on creating a good one in as little time as possible, and then move forward. Now that you've made your mind map for the 3 topics, you've solidified your understanding. Testing is the second half of learning, and with exams, you want to be able to learn and then remember the information like this. People ask me a lot, oh, should I put my mind maps or parts of my mind maps on the flashcards and then recall them? And the usual answer I have is no. Your mind map is just a visual, well, not just, it's quite a big deal. It's the visual representation of the entire 3 topics that you've studied. And yes, you need to keep referring to this mind map in your head as you continue to learn and revise the information, but your exam will not be testing you about this mind map. The things that you should be putting on your flashcards and testing yourself on are the questions that are going to be similar to the ones that show up on your exams. And as I said, if you are making flashcards, if you are testing yourself, use RemNote. It's a very quick way to do it. You can create the flashcards within the notes without wasting any time. Also, let me show you something else you can do. You can go on the flashcards homepage here, input your exam date, and then RemNote will automatically, it'll use its spaced repetition formula to come up with the exact flashcards that you need to be doing every day to know all of this knowledge perfectly. And that's insanely useful. There's no need to manually decide how many flashcards or how many hours of work you're going to do every day. Like Anki, it's going to help you with the spaced repetition formula. It's all automatically sorted. I've already given you a ton of reasons that you should be using this app instead of any other. So click the link in the description. I don't know what you're waiting for, and try them out for free. And if you sign up for the pro subscription using the link in the description, you'll get a month off for it, and I will get a bit of a kickback as well. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Anyways, that was the full high-speed mind mapping 6-step method that I've given you. I'll leave up a summary of it here. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about it at all, please put them in the comments. I hope you find this useful. Leave a like, do the usual stuff, and I will see you in the next one.